Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Drink with Crazy. Nothing is true and everything is permitted. A tagline from one of the longest running video game franchises to this point, Assassinss Creed. This is something that Matt and I had a conversation about behind the scenes years ago, and I wasn't quite ready to tackle it. I did think it was interesting enough to warrant a conversation, to figure out how exactly this could be a philosophy. And a few weeks ago, I think I finally nailed it and nailed a way to talk about nothing is true and everything is permitted in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. I know it was for me, and hopefully it is for you. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment down below to let us know what you guys think about this conversation. And also, if you really like what we're doing, share this video with all of your friends and subscribe to this channel. Nothing would make us happier than to see more people engage in the conversation with us. Thank you so much. And again, I hope you enjoy this conversation about nothing is true and everything being permitted. All right, so this topic comes from a conversation that we had years ago, back when we lived in the same geographic area, and it's something that we wanted to cover, but I didn't have the answer at the time, and it is...
It's also because you left, let's be real.
Well, yeah, I did leave. But obviously the tenet of the assassins from Assassin's Creed is, you know, nothing is true and everything is permitted. And we got into this conversation and you started being a sarcastic a-hole with me, but I couldn't get past like the sarcastic a-hole thing because I didn't have an answer for it. And so,
I mean, that's just kind of me.
Well, yeah, that is. And over the years, that conversation just got to me as I was thinking about it. And the more that I thought about it, the more I was like, well, how do I answer this? So nothing is true. Everything is permitted. And so there are two things that we had to define there. The first thing was true or truth. And the second thing is everything. Right. And so in the context of this,
and permitted, right? Like, I mean, what does that actually entail?
Well,
are we talking like social law? Are we talking like, yeah. So.
Yeah. And for the context of this, I think defining truth and everything will kind of cover that permission part. Right. Cool. But what I eventually came to the conclusion of, because defining truth as a human being is something that everybody is looking to do. And my goal in defining truth was, if we're going to define this assassins, the creed of the assassins, right? This philosophy that nothing is true, everything is permitted. If we're going to define that, I had to figure out what truth is in more of a universal sense and less of a me sense. Because I hate the my truth thing. The my truth thing.
The whole point of the phrase is, you know, truth is subjective and nothing will stop you. And so how do you actually take what is basically an emo teen's one-liner from a video game and actually, you know, because, you know, it's one of those things where I started to take it in one way, and I'm not gonna lie, I'd piss a lot of people off with that, because they'd be like, but no, this is but think about what I yeah, you included.
Yeah. No, well, and
so the point was never, and granted, I do it in a very snarky way. But,
being on the receiving end of that, yeah, you do.
Yes, I do. But the point was to get people to think. I mean, you know, the idea that truth has a certain subjectivity to it, the idea that there is nothing that will stop you from doing anything, that was kind of the thought process I was trying to get started. That was the actual intent.
And on the premise of subjective truth, I despise subjective truth. I've always believed. I've always believed in more of an objective truth, a truth as a whole, and the thing that all of us are trying to find. And that's why I think, for me, I finally was able to do it. And I had to call you, and obviously you and I had this conversation already.
I know.
But the definition of truth, that in order for me to argue this point and really dig down into, do the assassins like live by this code, and what is their code and does it work, is I figured out truth to be three different. So truth can be applied in three different ways: action, spoken word, and spiritual. But it all it's all done the same way. And the way that truth is defined is in the opposite direction of malice and deceit. So in action, if your actions are based in the direction opposite of malice and deceit, so you're acting in a way to avoid those things actively or just without the intention of, you're acting in a truthful manner. If you're speaking in a way that is in the opposite direction of malice and deceit, or in the intentional direction away from malice and deceit, you're being truthful. And then spiritually, if you are looking inward at yourself and your goal is to remove, malice and deceit from yourself, so that way you can focus more on that. That is where I think truth is. So truth is in the absence of malice and deceit. To boil it down to just short. But that is what I believe universal truth to be, is the absence of malice and deceit. And I believe that this covers not only just the three things but it also gets rid of that idiotic argument of my truth. And the reason that I don't like that argument is because the my truth thing allows for people, because as long as they believe it, they can deceive themselves and not willingly have to accept other information that may be...
And other viewpoints.
And other viewpoints and things like that. So they can actively deceive themselves. And if you're deceiving yourself, that's the opposite of truth. And what I'm trying to go for is the universal truth here. And so when we were going back and forth, and also, it also separates it from fact, because that was the big thing in our conversation. And so how do you apply...
Well, the problem with the whole thing is it's very much a nutshell sort of thing, right? You come out and you just blanket statement... Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. That breeds a lot of counter argument, because you go, well, okay, well, is a tree not a tree? Is a rock not a rock?
And arguments that I used, I couldn't get past. And then you just came back at me. You were like, no, that's a fact, not a truth. And I'm like, and you shut me down. And this is why it just struck a chord with me, and I just...
And the thing is, and I definitely like the angle you're going on this, the idea of nothing is true is not meant to be the end-all be-all. This isn't some, social lit class where you sit there and you write an essay on this and talk about how this is so wise. No, what it is it's a question, or a statement, rather, that is meant to get people to think, because exactly what you're talking about with the subjective truth, that is exactly what the statement is meant to counteract.
No, and so the idea is, so the idea of especially this video is, okay, do the assassins abide by the code? Can they abide by the code? Nothing is true and everything is permitted. But in order to see if the assassins do that, we have to define truth first to the best of our ability. And I think to the best of my ability...
No, and I think that's a very good way to approach it. I'm just, I'm letting you know where that statement is meant to direct.
No, and that's the cool thing. But if you're gonna put it in the video game terms, do the assassins actually follow? Chair.
I think honestly it depends on the assassin.
No, and I think it does. And then the second thing we have to define is everything. So everything. So obviously, if we have truth over here, then everything would also encompass truth, but then everything outside of truth. So that malice and deceit portion that I talked about,
is
right?
also permitted.
Is also permitted. So nothing is true, everything is permitted, right? So you can be malicious, you can be deceitful, and do the assassins in Assassin's Creed, at least, early on, I have no idea where the lore is as of the recent games.
To be fair, I also phased out. I have not played Syndicate. I've only played the first third of Odyssey, and I've not played Valhalla.
But if we're talking about, they say nothing is true. Nothing is true. And this is where we get into the weeds a little bit, but I would agree that at least physically in this world, dealing with people, nothing is true. And the reason being is because we can't achieve absolute truth. And we don't possess that capacity. So nothing is true.
Absolute truth would mean omnipotence, really.
Well,
or omniscience.
Not omnipotence, but essentially...
Sorry, no, wrong word, because omnipotence is absolute power. I mean omniscience, absolute knowledge.
No. And I don't even think it would be that. I think what it would be it would be strength of will. It would be perfect strength of will, right? To avoid malicious and deceitful intent, even on the small scales, right? Those tiny things. White lies to your kids because they're asking questions, above their age range, which, my wife and we have to deal with.
Do
things
these
like
jeans make me look fat?
Yeah. Well, am I going to be deceitful, malicious, or am I going to be truthful? And there is a way to be truthful, because again, truth does not mean that you're spitting absolute fact, because truth and fact are two totally separate things here. And the idea here isn't that you're being factual necessarily, because you can say something, and you could be just missing information. But as long as you're missing that information, or acting in a way missing information, or acting in a way spiritually and not realize certain things about yourself. But again, it's not, fact and truth are two totally separate things. And that's why I had to define it, because nothing is true and everything is permitted. And it's like, okay, if I'm going to attack this and see if this assassin's philosophy works, and if they can actually abide by it, is it an actual thing? And if you're directing it at people, I think that the code stands on the first merit.
From a societal
standpoint, I think it stands. From a spiritual standpoint, I don't think it stands. Now that's not to say that anybody is spiritually pure, but that is to say that the assassins that on a societal level, nothing is true. No individual person is, in essence, perfectly true. Because again, none of us have that iron will, pure will.
Correct. And it all ranges from, and it's obviously on, a scale, everything from, I will stand for this if I'm elected to office, sliding all the way down to, hey, honey, do I look good in these jeans?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where the white lie comes in is, the factual statement might not be a wise statement.
But it can also be...
Or a kind.
I mean, the idea here being is that, and this would get way into the weeds, and this is a conversation we can talk offline, but like what you're touching on here is, could a lie, now that is deceit, but could it be true? Could saving somebody's feelings, but that gets into a whole moralistic argument that I don't think that you and I are prepared for here.
I just want to touch on it because it can lead into a conversation later,
and you're right. And so, but again, malice and deceit, and I think I think there is a way to tackle.
The word I'm honing in on is malice.
Well, malice, but the deceit thing is true, because deceit is the theft of truth. So now we define the everything portion of this. So we've talked about the truth portion. The everything portion of this can encompass the truth, but can also encompass, again, the malice and the deceit portion of this. Mm-hmm. And so if nothing is true and everything is permitted, and everything is a very broad thing,
it's about as broad as you can
do the assassins live by the everything portion? And I would say on its whole, at least with the Assassin's Creed that I experienced in 1, a little bit of 2 here and there, just, I would say that no, I don't think that the assassins live by the everything portion, because they do still have a code of conduct that they follow to it. So in that sense, nothing is true, probably accurate to their philosophy. Is everything permitted? No, because there are restrictions that they put upon themselves. So not everything is permitted.
You cannot endanger the Brotherhood. You cannot, you will stay your blade from the blood of innocence.
Yeah. Exactly. And again, boiling down to that, what kind of... It's to say, do assassins really believe this? Because, if you really boil it down, nothing is true and everything is permitted. You're getting rid of loyalty. You're getting rid of... And then the assassins very much believed in loyalty to the Brotherhood.
They had a certain degree of ethics.
Exactly. And so I don't think that the assassins live by their own code in any... At least in that philosophy. I don't think they live by their own code in any at least not on the second half. On the first half, yeah, you could say nothing is true in a societal standpoint, because again, you don't have a true statement in the societal standpoint. And so when you don't have a true statement in the societal standpoint, I
come back to the idea that the statement is not meant to be a code to live by. Not necessarily. It is meant to be a understanding of almost kind of it is a very cynical approach, but it's an understanding of the way the world is.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, and we are speaking societally here, not in terms of facts, hard facts, rock being rock, tree being tree. From a societal standpoint, the idea of nothing being true, everybody has, or at least wants, their own individual truth. Everybody wants to have their own perspective validated. And nothing will ever stop somebody from doing something. Like, just because we have laws that will punish somebody does not mean that, something's going to prevent them from doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this day in and day out. And so I don't think it's meant to be, something that, I'm an assassin because I believe nothing is true and everything is permitted, and therefore I can do what I want. Now, I think that's the wrong approach. It is an understanding that, at least as far as we as human beings are concerned, is essentially take everything with a grain of salt. Facts may or may not be understood. Truth will always change based on who's, observing it. And nothing will stop somebody from doing the wrong thing or the right thing. That is what I mean. And in that context, I would argue that the Assassins are at least mostly there. They're looking at it from the perspective of, we believe we are doing the right thing, hence everything is permitted. We believe that we need to have individual freedoms, and we cannot be controlled for the sake of peace. That is their truth. But
they really didn't have individual freedoms. I mean, if you look back at the Brotherhood and the hierarchy of the Brotherhood, I mean, this goes all the way back to 1. Yeah. I mean, they were heavily controlled, and if you stepped out of line just a little bit, your number was punched.
No.
I mean, the individual freedoms.
That's how AC1 opened, was with the heck was
with
his
Altair.
Name? Well, yes, him, but I meant the mentor of that branch. Al-Mualim. Al-Mualim. I'm butchering the pronunciation.
Yeah.
I apologize. But that was very much the thing, because Altair broke all the tenets of the creed of the Assassins. He killed an innocent. He endangered the Brotherhood, and he revealed himself unnecessarily. That was the actual rules.
Yeah.
But it had very little to do with the motto,
the philosophy, the moniker. Yeah.
Correct. And so, do the Assassins actually live by that code, that creed? No, they don't. They absolutely don't. But I don't think it's possible to. It's not meant to be something you live by. It's meant to be something that you keep in the back of your mind to kind of guide how you perceive things that are happening.
Well, and that's the thing that I was wondering, and it's not so much it's not so much that I really wanted to get into a mechanical version of what was said, because that's kind of where we're at right now.
But I think it's important to actually understand, at least from my understanding, what is meant by it. And no, and you're probably not wrong there in what was meant by it. But again, I don't think that they were looking at it in a mechanical version, right? Right.
And the nothing is true. And I don't and my intention is not to get into the mechanics of it, but to simply do our best to define okay. Because again, something like that could be a hand wave thing. And obviously it was just this, this edgelord freaking thing that, some writer wrote. Yes. They were like, yes. High five, dude. That sounds so deep and so but it's like, okay, well, let's look into the depth
reduction of what the actual Assassins said.
Exactly. And so, let's look into this and let's see, is this something that, I mean, does it hold water? Does it hold water as an actual philosophy is kind of what I was looking at.
Yes.
And and could the Assassins live by it? Is it something that, and again, that challenged me. I mean, this is something that, I mean, we had this conversation 2 years ago, or
before that too. It comes up every now and again,
and it does, and it did, and for it's the first time we had this conversation. I couldn't get past those roadblocks because I didn't myself possess enough understanding or enough knowledge, or I hadn't connected the dots in a way to be like, okay, how would one define truth, and what would be the closest thing to like a universal truth as possible? And I think, again, actions, whether physical, verbal, or spiritual, done in the opposite direction of malice and deceit is the closest thing that I can come to when it comes to when it comes to this answer. And if we're going to have this conversation, you go, no, that's a truth, not a fact. You say, okay, so it's a truth, not a fact. How do I get around the fact portion of it? And I think that that's how I was able to get around the fact portion of it and really see.
It is acting in the best interest that you can. You are not attempting to hurt anybody.
Well, no, and it's the non-aggression principle to take into an extreme, but don't lie to somebody because that hurts somebody's intellectual capabilities. You by lying to them. Obviously, if you physically attack them, that's it's right. And it's that. Again, it was just this interesting thing that I thought about is how would you see if this philosophy holds weight at all in any way? And I think that this is the best way that I was able to do that. And with that, man, I'll give you the last word.
And honestly, I think I agree with you on this one too. And I know we kind of, it's the thing about this statement is it's so vague that it is not something that you can ever take as a literary or a literal standpoint.
Yeah.
You can't say I stand for this because it's not a standpoint. It's a thought process. It's a viewpoint. And so the whole idea of what is a universal truth, and you say it's the, intentional aversion to deceit and malice.
No,
and
it's done in the opposite direction of. Sometimes not even intentional,
okay.
but it is the movement in the opposite direction. It's a directional thing. So if truth is this way, the malice and deceit are this way.
Correct. Okay, cool.
It's a directional thing.
And so I would say, the universal truth, and this is in direct opposition to that statement, the universal truth is do no harm to the best of your capability.
Well, and harm being malice and deceit.
Correct. I'm agreeing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to see if this philosophy would even hold water, and I think.
Honestly, the truth is, and I'll let you finish here in a second. I'm sorry.
Nope.
I don't think it does. Not as a philosophy. It's not a philosophy. It never will be. It is a tool to be used to view the world in a certain way. It's an understanding of a certain societal trend, and the idea that anything and everything can and probably will happen at least at some point. Right. That's all it is.
Right.
So I'll let you wrap up here.
I mean, honestly, I think, we're at our time limit here for the time limit that we set for ourselves, because otherwise we'll keep going forever. But honestly,
we'll be here 2 hours.
We would. No, well, and we've had this conversation for multiple hours before, and it was finally.
I think the record was 6, and that was about 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah,
but no, so the idea here is that, so what do you guys think? Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Is that something that obviously it's just a video game thing, but we here like to attack, the pop culture stuff from a different angle. It's video, the story, the this, the that, but we like to try to attack things from a slightly different angle. And we want your opinion. What do you guys think? Is the definition of truth that I came up with, is that something that would hold water? Is the definition of everything, which is truth and plus including malice and deceit, is that something that would hold water? And then does this little philosophy thing hold water? Because that was the real idea of this conversation. And I want to hear from anybody who checks this video out. Let us know down below in the comments, and let us know what you think for sure. I put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into this idea and this contract, and then I also had to whittle it down into a 20-minute conversation, and that can be very hard to do.
And that's very hard to do, especially with something like this.
Yeah. And so, guys, just let us know what you guys think, truth, everything, and the larger whole would be, and how it would relate to Assassin's Creed. And don't forget that if you guys liked what you saw here, hit the like button down below and share this with everybody that you know if this is something that you're interested in, because we plan to do a whole lot more of this, and we plan to get back to what we were doing on this channel before life decided to pull its little puppet strings on us.
New jobs,
new jobs, new locations. But thank you all so much for watching A Drink with Crazy, and we will see you all next time right here. Cheers. Thank you for watching A Drink with Crazy. If you liked the conversation, make sure to click here to see more.